last week where for 2.5 days, House Democrats had an opportunity to talk about the future and about how we're ready to work to get some things done, and we hope that our Republican colleagues would take advantage of this year to try to do that. We understand that the Speaker, Paul Ryan, will be meeting with the President for lunch. We hope they enjoy their meal, and we hope they come back ready to work, ready to get some things done. The President laid out an agenda in his State of the Union. We hope that there will be cooperation here in the House to work together to get some things done. And we need to get some things done. No one should believe that the circumstances in Flint, Michigan are acceptable. And no one should have to worry about the water their kids are going to drink. And so while I understand that there will be some hearings here in the Congress dealing with the pollution and the toxicity that is now infecting the health of thousands of people, including children in Flint, we hope that this Congress will probe deeply into what's going on in Flint. What happened that a state and government, local government bureaucracy allowed families, including children, for months to drink contaminated water. And so we're hoping that we will do our job of oversight and make sure that we get down to the bottom of this. And hopefully this won't be like the Wall Street crash where no heads rolled. And hopefully our Republican colleagues will treat this the way they've treated other less significant issues, and digging very deeply and doing massive investigations, sometimes 7 or 8 times, as we saw with the tragic circumstances that occurred in Benghazi, where Republicans, I guess, didn't like the results the first few times, and so they kept doing more investigations. We hope that they will use the same intensity, or look at this with the same intensity to do something about giving us answers about how Americans could be poisoned through their drinking water and the water system that was supposed to be providing Flint, Michigan residents with clean water. This week, we're going to take yet another vote. I believe it's the 63rd vote on dismantling or repealing the Affordable Care Act. It's as if people haven't yet recognized the real value of having health security now for so many Americans, 18 million Americans who now have the same kind of insurance or health security that most of us have just relied upon and taken for granted. We no longer see Americans filing for personal bankruptcy the way they did before the Affordable Care Act became law. Nearly half of all personal bankruptcies that Americans faced were the result of a medical bill. That's history now. And why would we want to go back to the days when that occurred? Why would we want to go back to the days when your child could be denied health care because of a pre-existing condition? Why do we want to go back to the days where women were charged more for the same type of health care that men were being charged? Rather than go back to what was going on in the 20th century, let's work to build the 21st century. And so we're hoping that this lunch at the White House between the Speaker, Paul Ryan, and our President, Barack Obama, will result in cooperation to get some things done, because that's what we need right now, is to get things done, not dismantle or repeal things that have helped millions upon millions of Americans. And with that, let me turn now to our Vice Chairman, Joe Crowley, who will then introduce our dear colleague and a real champion for working families, Jan Schakowsky from Illinois, after he speaks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the real question today is that when Paul Ryan emerges from his meeting with the President, will he see a shadow? And if he does see a shadow, does that mean there's another 6 weeks of ACA repeal in store for all of us? When you work in the House of Representatives, Groundhog Day means an awful lot. It could mean the end to winter, or it could be more like the classic movie. The funny thing, though, is if you're Bill Murray and you're in the movie, it's very funny. If you're Paul Ryan, you're the Speaker of the House, it's not that funny. In fact, it's very sad. But we continue to see the same old, same old. And really, what does it all mean is that if he sees a shadow, there's really no end to the tunnel here. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. And there's no end to this tunnel. It never ends. unlike Punxsutawney Phil, when he sees a shadow, we do know that spring will come someday. It may be delayed a little bit, but we do know it will come. That's not the case here in the House of Representatives. We have seen the same scene played out, this movie played out over and over again. We see another attack on the Affordable Care Act, an effort to take away health care from 22 million Americans who now have it. And what that means, it means that it will be another effort to take away a time when you could be denied coverage for having a pre-existing condition, that will be reinstated again. A time when working families live with the fear that a single medical emergency could bankrupt their entire family. You could see that happen again. And a time when insurance companies made health decisions for you as opposed to your doctor and you working in a collaborative way to save not only yourselves but your families as well. So again, it's Groundhog Day here in the House of Representatives. But the cliche or not, what's most alarming is what we're not seeing. We're not seeing anything to put Americans back to work. Nothing to address what's happening in the island of Puerto Rico. Nothing to fix our broken immigration system. Nothing to bring greater certainty to our economy. It is just another sad movie line here in the House of Representatives. Unfortunately, again, no light at the end of this tunnel. It seems like a forever winter here in Washington, D.C. And with that, let me turn it over to a great leader on women's issues here in the House of Representatives, the ranking member on the Select Committee dealing with the issues of women's rights here in the United States, Jan Schakowsky of Chicago.
Thank you so much to the leaders of our caucus who are doing such a great job. So it is Groundhog Day, happy Groundhog Day, and appropriately, the Republicans are celebrating by voting for the 63rd time to repeal the Affordable Care Act and the 12th time to attack Planned Parenthood and women's health. This is only the 12th business day of the session, and so I expect that we're going to see more repeat performances of the kind of attacks on women that we have seen from this Republican-led Congress. These relentless attacks on Planned Parenthood and other healthcare providers just have to stop. The continuous attempts to repeal the Affordable Care Act have to come to an end, and the Republican Select Panel to attack women's health that I am the ranking Democrat on must be disbanded. You know, the Texas court, the Texas grand jury surprised everyone. I have been asking some lawyers, have you ever seen an instance where a grand jury will be asked to investigate a group like Planned Parenthood or any situation, and then end up indicting the accusers? And even so, in line with Groundhog Day, the chairwoman of this select committee said, as if nothing had ever happened, that it is time to investigate the sale of baby body parts, the same words that were used by a violent killer at a Planned Parenthood clinic, and the kind of violence that can result from the language that is used. Planned Parenthood serves nearly 3 million Americans each year, provides life-saving screenings, treatments, and other essential health care needs, and yet, without a shred of evidence, and as I said, even indicting the accusers, Planned Parenthood the Republicans continue to carry on this assault. This is not a serious effort that we're seeing today. This isn't going to happen. They want to override the president's veto. That is not going to happen. What this is a mean, misguided, anti-woman effort. The Affordable Care Act meant that women are no longer discriminated against. The investigation of Planned Parenthood would destroy an organization that actually prevents abortions by helping women get access to contraception. And women of America are watching, and they don't like what they see. Happy Groundhog Day.
With that, we also want to just congratulate the winners of yesterday's Iowa caucuses, to Ted Cruz and to Hillary Clinton. We congratulate them on their victory. On the Democratic side, we certainly want to recognize that it was a great competition that occurred in the state. Bernie Sanders doing very, very well also. And we want to congratulate and acknowledge Governor Martin O'Malley for the work that he did. He has now decided to suspend his campaign, but certainly he gave it energy, gave the campaign energy, and made it clear that we had three great Democrats who are running, and onward to New Hampshire. We'll take questions.
I wonder if you have any thoughts about what maybe any deficiencies or any shortcomings that may have been displayed by the Clinton campaign in seeing such a better than expected turnout for Sanders.
Next week, or this coming Sunday, we're going to watch a Super Bowl where the Denver Broncos didn't make it by much, but they're in the Super Bowl. And it's all about winning the Super Bowl. And in this case, it's all about winning the Super Bowl in elections. Hillary Clinton came out on top. It was a close victory. And as she said, it was hard fought. And, you know, I think she congratulated both Martin O'Malley and Bernie Sanders. But at the end of the day, she won. And she may have won by a little or may have won by a lot. At the end of the day, what people remember is who wins and who ultimately becomes president. I'm thrilled to watch the competition on the Democratic side. I love that we're tackling the issues, not each other. And I think the more that we have a vigorous debate, the more people will feel good about their democracy. And rather than hearing about how our government lets our children drink contaminated water as they are in Flint, let's have a robust discussion and applaud when we have Democrats really talking about the issues and not talking about attacking each other.
If I could just add to that, I think we just want to thank all the Democratic candidates for invigorating this campaign. You know, there was a huge turnout yesterday in Iowa, second probably only to 8 years ago when President Obama was running against Hillary Clinton at that time, and the result was different. This time, Senator Clinton did come out on top. And now it's on to Iowa's Iowa. We're moving now on to New Hampshire and to the other states. And I think, as Senator Clinton said, she appreciates what Bernie Sanders has done to bring young people in particular to the fore and to be engaged. But I do think in the end that Senator Clinton will benefit from that when she is running in the November elections against whoever the Republican nominee will be.
What does that say about your party, though, that it was so deeply divided in Iowa? You know,
Certainly on two candidates.
you say there's a vigorous debate. There is a vigorous debate. I mean, what does that say about you guys that there isn't, people aren't coalescing around one candidate?
Why would we be anything less than enthusiastic about a competitive race for president? There are 320 million people in this country. We should believe that we have a lot of people in this country who've risen to the ranks to be able to run for and maybe become president of the United States or president of a major company or the principal of the school. I think it's great. I admire what our three Democrats have done in this race. I admire what Hillary Clinton has done over her many years of working on behalf of American families. I think it's great to have this competition. I look at this, and to me, the glass is half full, where Democrats are having a vigorous campaign on the issues, and we're going to end up with only one. I believe it'll be Hillary Clinton, but I think it's great that we have this competition rather than, as we see on the other side, where they're now attacking each other at every turn. Let's go at it, and let's have a winner at the end of the day. Just as this coming Sunday, we'll have a winner at the Super Bowl. And I don't think the team that wins is going to be the team that knocks down the other team's personalities. It's going to be who does the best on the field. And at the end of the day, on the Democratic side, our nominee will be the person who does the best on the field. And yesterday, Hillary Clinton was the best on the field.
Let me just say, I think yesterday's contest also laid to rest a myth about the Democrats, which was that there's this enthusiasm gap, that Democrats aren't fired up, that they aren't coming out to vote. And we saw something entirely different yesterday, both for Hillary Clinton and for Bernie Sanders. And I think that's really important. I think that now the energy on the Democratic side cannot be mistaken as being low. It was really high yesterday.
And did I miss something yesterday? Are the Republicans united? Did they coalesce around one candidate? I think it was 27% for the man who led the effort to shut down the American government, came out in first with 27%. 24% for, I know these are New York values speaking, obviously, but, Donald Trump, who has used every piece of garbage he can possibly find to throw on the wall and see what sticks, comes in with 24%. And Marco Rubio, who can't even find, or doesn't even know what he believes in, is at 24%. Doesn't sound like they're all getting behind one candidate in their party. I think in the end, what Democrats will show is that the invigoration that both Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Martin O'Malley have brought to this campaign will benefit our candidate in November of this year. I believe that will be Hillary Clinton. I think she will be the first woman president of the United States, not just because she's a woman, because she is qualified. She has done the work that is necessary to help lead this country forward. And lastly, I'll say this. We're talking about the vision of America. Democrats have a vision, and they're talking about maybe tweaks here and there on slight differences in some policies, but in general, we all really are on the same page. They are not.
So Congress has an obligation to vote on an authorization to use military force with regard to the situation in Syria, Iraq, in my opinion. And I do believe Congress has been AWOL by not having a vote. Whether we vote and pass a authorization is another matter, but we must first fulfill our constitutional obligation to have a vote and make a decision about that. And so I think it's been derelict for our Republican colleagues who are in control of the House and the Senate to not allow the American people to know what the direction of their government is through the voice of Congress, which must speak on issues of war. And so I hope we do have that opportunity. I do believe it should be a limited authorization. I don't believe it should be an open-ended authorization to declare war and institute military actions anywhere at any time for as long as anyone would want. But I am prepared to have a debate on whether we should authorize the president to use our troops and our military to try to win a war. At this stage, I'm not sure why we would want to get involved in a foreign civil war, but I'm willing to have that debate, and I do believe that it should be clear what the parameters of that authorization should be. Let me ask my colleagues if they wish to comment on that.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
I don't think we should just have a blanket, wide open AUMUF. I think what we should be doing is really forcing members of Congress to think about what their vision is in terms of bringing the war to ISIL and defeating them, as opposed to just simply hiding behind, we're going to give the president carte blanche, anything he or she wants in the future. We're working on an AUMF from almost 15 years ago. It's not supposed to be in perpetuity, forever from that day forward. And we have to address these issues as they arise. The president has asked for it. Many Democrats have asked for it. I know some Republicans have asked for that as well. We should move forward on that.
Today, when Obama and Ryan had lunch, one of the things they are expected to talk about is the TPP. And I'm just wondering how much support do you think Democrats will be able to provide the White House in its efforts to get TPP passed?
We saw the vote on the Trade Promotion Authority legislation, which allows the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade bill, to come forward through an expedited process. Many of us are looking over the terms of the agreement. We had a general sense of it. Now we actually get to see the terms themselves in front of us. And I will simply tell you that if I can't conclude that this trade agreement will help us go after the cheaters, and there are a whole bunch of cheaters out there in the international marketplace, I can't support a deal like that. If I believe it does, if it helps go after the cheaters with real enforcement provisions, if we have partners that really will outside of the confines of our country and the reach of our laws, if those countries will enforce the provisions so we can have not just what's called free trade but fair trade, then I would support it. But I will tell you right now, one of my biggest concerns, and I've expressed this to the administration over and over again, is that there are cheaters that we know out there trying to take advantage of American businesses who follow the rules. That's bad. But if that weren't bad enough, these companies that are cheating are located in countries where the governments are also cheating. And so it's tough for me to believe that a company that is cheating in a foreign land and costing us American jobs and American business is going to follow the rules under TPP if the country that's supposed to enforce those rules is cheating as well. And by a country cheating, I'm talking about the way some countries are manipulating their currency, the value of their currency, so that they can make all the goods that leave their country and are exported to places like the U.S. look less expensive, which means American businesses and American workers can't compete. And that has cost us millions of jobs over the last decade or so by allowing countries, not just companies, but countries to cheat against American workers and American businesses. And so those are the things that I think some of us will be looking at. But I think on this one, it's going to be a heavy lift on the Democratic side to support a trade deal unless things like going after cheaters, making sure there are really enforceable rules, and believing we have real partners who want to work with us are in place, and not that we're just going to undermine our people, our workers, and as well our laws, which could be in jeopardy if we're not careful with some of these trade deals.
I think the chairman has made some very astute observations about the overall deal itself. But let me throw this at you. At this lunch, where the president is having lunch with the speaker, I don't think the president's going to ask the speaker, how many Democratic votes do you think we have? I think the question is, how many votes can he produce from his own caucus? And as the results of last night's election in Iowa, and primary election in Iowa, I think this is becoming even more difficult issue within the Republican caucus. Can the speaker actually tell the president how many Republican votes he can deliver for this bill? I would venture to guess the answer is no, he can't.
On Puerto Rico, do you all, obviously in the negotiations, they're so early that there's talk of an advisory board or a control board. Do you have any specific thoughts on that at this point, what you would like to see in terms of some sort of advisory or control authority?
Yeah, and let me juxtapose what's going on in Puerto Rico, where 4 million U.S. citizens are essentially dangling because this Congress has been unwilling to act to help it resolve its own problems without taxpayer money from the U.S. having to help them resolve their problems. It appears that our Republican colleagues want to have a noose over the neck of the people of Puerto Rico just to give them the ability to solve their own problems. It's not as if we're going to be forsaking American tax dollars to help Puerto Rico solve its own problems. No, but they just need to have the latitude, the ability within the laws to solve their own problems, which they don't right now. They're constrained by U.S. law. Whereas in Flint, Michigan, I see very little being done by this Congress to try to figure out what's going on where thousands of Americans have been poisoned by the state and local government there in the state of Michigan. And so why is it that Republicans in the Congress seem so intent on having such a tight noose around the people who live on the island of Puerto Rico, even though it's not going to cost any taxpayer money to change the law to let them solve their own problem? Yet in Flint, Michigan, it's as if Republicans want to keep their hands off of the situation. I don't know what's going on, but it sure seems like a double standard to me.
What specifically can Congress do about Flint? What would you like to see done if you were to
One of the first things we should be doing is having the governor of state of Michigan come before us and explain to us why it was that he and his team allowed the people of Flint, Michigan to be told that they would be drinking contaminated water when there is a fresh water source that was being used prior to that. This is this is trying to do government on the cheap. It certainly appears that way, that the governor was trying to save a little bit of money at the expense of thousands of Americans. And now we're finding that many of these children are having health effects as a result of this, learning, if not disabilities, certainly problems. And it just doesn't make any sense to some of us. Why? Why aren't we at least trying to figure that out? Let's dig into that. And what else can we do? Certainly we can find out if there was any criminal activity on the part of anyone in the state government from the governor on down. And if so, then let's prosecute. I think Americans are tired of watching the way we saw with Wall Street when we saw the Wall Street crash. Not one head rolled. Not one person was prosecuted at the highest levels for the catastrophe that was caused in this country that led to many millions of Americans losing their homes and much of their livelihood. So I don't believe Americans want to sit by and just watch as some people run government to the ground. And doing government on the cheap, I don't believe is good for anyone. At least allow the people of Puerto Rico who are trying to solve their problems have the ability under the law to solve their problems at no taxpayer expense.
I would just add to this. We had a select committee established here in the House of Representatives based on a fabricated video that, as my colleague Jan Schakowsky said, when a grand jury was impaneled in Texas, not only did they not indict Planned Parenthood, they indicted the people who put together that video. But we had established a select committee here in the House to investigate it. Where is the public outcry here in Washington to create a select committee to focus on what took place in Flint, how it happened, why it happened, and who's responsible? Is there a grand jury taking place in Michigan today investigating who is responsible for it and bringing some criminal charges against those who would inflict this upon their own citizens? I think they've bankrupted their ability to investigate themselves. They need the federal government. The people of Michigan need the federal government, someone else to come in and investigate, find out how this could have happened, and bring those who are responsible to justice. As far as the people of Puerto Rico are concerned, there's a lot of finger pointing going on here, and the clock is ticking. They're using every possible machination they can come up with to pay their bills and hold off their creditors. They need to address this issue immediately for the sake of those 4 million Americans who are suffering financially in Puerto Rico, and help Puerto Rico get back on its feet.
Any final question? The president presented a proposal that would allow the people of Puerto Rico to deal with their fiscal crisis. It could be done at no taxpayer expense. That proposal has been sitting here in the Congress for months. Our Republican colleagues understood that this was a dire situation, that every day that goes by, American families in Puerto Rico pay the price because their credit is impacted, their ability to work is impacted, their ability to purchase the things they need for their family, food and pay for their homes and so forth, is impacted. And so every day it's costing the people of Puerto Rico, the U.S. citizens of Puerto Rico, more and more money. The proposal is very simple. It gives Puerto Rico the ability as a government to resolve these financial crises, which it can't do right now because of arcane law that governs how Puerto Rico can and cannot move in this regard. And so the administration simply said, let's give them some of the same abilities that state and local governments already have in the mainland U.S. to resolve these fiscal issues. And so it's unfortunate that Republicans continue to wait because the price is being paid principally by American families in Puerto Rico, not necessarily the government, but the American families. With that, thank you all very much.
Thank you.